Here is something that should genuinely disturb you. Right now, at this exact moment, you have a tailbone. Sitting at the base of your spine, a small fused cluster of vertebrae called the coccyx, pointing inward toward nothing. It serves almost no structural purpose. It is not supporting anything critical. It is not helping you balance or move or survive in any meaningful way. It is the leftover stub of a tail your ancestors lost somewhere between 20 and 25 million years ago, and you're still carrying the remnant of it inside your body right now. Every other primate has one. Monkeys have tails. Lemurs have tails. Most mammals have tails, and somewhere deep in our evolutionary past, a branch of primates lost theirs completely. That branch eventually became us, and for over a century scientists could not fully explain why. They thought they had the answer. They were wrong. And the real answer, discovered only recently, is so strange and so specific that when you hear it, you will not quite believe it happened this way. Start with what tails actually do, because you cannot understand why we lost ours without understanding what we gave up. Tails serve different functions across different species. Monkeys use them for balance, counterweighting their body as they move through trees. Some species have prehensile tails that grip branches like a fifth limb. Cats use their tails for precise balance adjustments during movement and jumping. Dogs use their tails for social signaling. Lizards store fat in their tails as an energy reserve. Fish use their tails as their primary propulsion system. Across all of these functions, there is one common thread. Tails are most useful for animals that spend significant time in trees, that need precise balance across complex terrain, or that need a clear social signaling mechanism visible from a distance. Apes, the group our ancestors belonged to, lost their tails. And they did it tens of millions of years ago, long before humans specifically appeared. Long before our lineage separated from chimpanzees. The taillessness we carry is not a human invention. It is an ape invention that we inherited. For a long time, the explanation seemed straightforward. Apes became larger than monkeys. Larger bodies move through trees differently, spending more time on stable large branches rather than the thin, flexible branches where a tail helps with balance. Larger body size made the tail mechanically less useful. So, over millions of years, the tail gradually reduced and eventually disappeared. This explanation was accepted for decades. It was tidy. It was logical. It made evolutionary sense. It was also incomplete. And in 2021, a study published in the journal Nature found the missing piece. And the missing piece is genuinely one of the strangest things in the entire story of human evolution. A geneticist named Bo Jia was working at NYU when he suffered a tailbone injury. Lying in the hospital thinking about his coccyx, he became curious about the genetic mechanism behind tail loss in apes. He went looking for the specific mutation that caused it. What he found was a single genetic change, not a gradual accumulation of many small mutations across millions of years. One specific insertion of a transposable element, a jumping gene, a piece of mobile DNA that inserted itself into a gene called TBXT in the common ancestor of all apes. TBXT is a gene that controls tail development in mammals. It is ancient and conserved across virtually every vertebrate species. Mice have it, dogs have it, fish have it. Every animal with a tail uses some version of this gene to grow it. When Bo Jia and his team inserted the same mutation into mice, specifically the ape version of the disrupted TBXT gene, something remarkable happened. The mice were born without tails. The single genetic change that occurred in one ancient ape ancestor millions of years ago was sufficient on its own to eliminate tail development entirely. One mutation, one moment, one ancestral individual in whom a jumping gene landed in exactly the wrong place at exactly the right time. And every ape alive today, every human alive today, carries the consequence of that single genetic accident in every cell of their body. You do not have a tail, not because evolution carefully selected against tails over millions of generations of gradual change. You do not have a tail because one ancient primate was born with a genetic glitch, and that glitch turned out to be survivable enough to pass on. But here's where it gets even stranger, because the same study found something else. Something the researchers did not expect, and that complicates the clean narrative significantly. The TBXT mutation did not just remove the tail, it introduced a new developmental risk at the same time. When mice with the ape version of TBXT were born tailless, a significant percentage of them were also born with neural tube defects, spinal abnormalities, problems with the development of the central nervous system that in humans would correspond to conditions like spina bifida. The same genetic change that eliminated the tail appears to have increased the risk of neural tube defects during development. The two effects are linked, produced by the same mutation, inseparable from each other. This creates a deeply uncomfortable evolutionary question. How did a mutation that increased the risk of potentially fatal developmental defects survive and spread through an entire population? The researchers suggest a trade-off. Whatever advantage losing the tail provided, whether it was better upright posture, reduced energy cost, reduced risk of the tail being grabbed by predators during ground movement, was significant enough to outweigh the increased developmental risk on a population level. The mutation spread not because it was perfectly beneficial, but because it was net beneficial despite the cost it carried. Evolution is not an engineer designing optimal solutions. It is a blind process selecting whatever works well enough under current conditions. And apparently losing a tail worked well enough even when it came packaged with a developmental risk that still affects human populations today. There's one more piece of this that almost nobody talks about. Humans are not the only ones still paying the price for that ancient mutation. Neural tube defects remain among the most common congenital abnormalities in human populations worldwide. Spina bifida and anencephaly-related conditions affecting the development of the spine and brain occur in roughly 1 in every 1,000 human pregnancies. Folic acid supplementation during pregnancy dramatically reduces this risk, which is why it is universally recommended. The reason folic acid helps is that it supports the developmental pathway that the TBXT mutation disrupts. Every pregnant person taking a folic acid supplement today is, in a very real biological sense, compensating for a genetic accident that happened to one ancient ape somewhere in Africa between 20 and 25 million years ago. The tail is gone. The cost of losing it is still being paid. Here's what the whole story tells you. You lost your tail not through some grand evolutionary design, not through millions of years of careful selective pressure gradually reducing an unnecessary appendage until it disappeared. You lost your tail because a piece of mobile DNA jumped into a gene in one ancient ancestor and scrambled its function. That ancestor survived, had offspring. Those offspring survived, and the mutation spread through an entire population and eventually became fixed in every ape lineage alive. The tailbone sitting at the base of your spine right now is not vestigial in the sense of being left over from a long gradual process. It is the ghost of a structure that was switched off in a single genetic moment so long ago that the species responsible for it no longer exists. You're carrying the aftermath of one ancient accident in your skeleton, and in the developmental biology of every human ever born, and in the public health recommendations given to every pregnant person alive today. One jumping gene, one ancient primate, one moment that changed the shape of every human body that has existed since. That is why you do not have a tail, and it is considerably weirder than anyone told you it would be.